up, guys? So today we're going to talk about some cartel stuff. Obviously right now cartels are a pretty hot topic in the news. We got Venezuela, we got Maduro, we got the border, we got all the trafficking they're saying is happening there. We have reports of people sniping and sending drones from the Mexican side to attack Border Patrol and National Guard, etc. So we're going to take a look at some stuff. We're just going to see what's going on, and I'm going to sort of like talk you through some of my own experiences, some stuff that I could compare this footage with in my own life, maybe give you guys a little bit of a perspective of how it's worse than you might think, but not only is it worse than you might think, but it's also not the same as it's been portrayed. It's more violent, it's more aggressive, it's more unpredictable, and honestly, this is why the border is such a problem. If you don't grow up with an education on why borders matter, then just hearing repeatedly, you know, we gotta close up the borders, we gotta close up the borders, we can't let anybody in. Yeah, that can sound kind of like messed up, right? It can sound like, you know, whatever you want it to sound like. But the fact of the matter is, anyway, if you're not kind of like living with the knowledge of what the consequences of a totally open, unsecured border are, if you don't really know what human trafficking actually is and what that entails, if you don't really know the effects that fentanyl has on people and stuff like that, then you know, the open border discussion, the battle on the border, it might start to sound like you just don't like Mexican people or something like that. So we're going to look at some stuff. We're going to see what's going on, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. One of the first things that we're going to look at is this Anthony Rubin interview with O'Keefe. And some of you guys might have seen this, some of you guys might have not, but I'm gonna pull it up anyway, and we're gonna watch it together right now.
So at one point, the guy that's driving, he's like, "Hey, by the way, let me see your phone." And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't think he saw me filming." He's like, "Let me see your phone." He takes it, he looks at it, and he just puts it in his middle console. I'm like, "Hey, can I have my phone back?" And he just ignores it. I'm like, "Oh shit, this is getting bad." We end up pulling up to this spot, maybe like 10 minutes away from the beach. They pull us out of the truck, and they just start interrogating us. And they're like, "What the hell are you doing?" And now another truck rolls up, and they're checking us for wires. They've searched every compartment of our bag. Ironically, they didn't find the GoPro. They didn't search the love handle package, so that we got away with our GoPro, which was great. But they find all of our electronics. They take my phone, and they're searching through my phone. I'm like, holy shit, they're gonna find the video I just took of them. They just didn't find it somehow.
They got logged into your phone?
They were like, let us into a phone. Like, we were checking your phone, we're checking everything. They were checking my camera.
You let them into your phone?
Yeah. At one point, this guy sees my drone, and he points to the drone, and he takes his pistol, and he goes like this, not to my head, but to his head, like almost like a death threat, like, we're gonna shoot you in the head for them. Like, holy shit.
There's some people who think that this guy's story isn't entirely real because of some of the things that he says, like El Jefe is such a Hollywood thing to, you know, refer to yourself as or refer to your boss as and stuff like that. So the fact that this white guy goes and, you know, he kind of says, you know, he's a journalist, so he's like, I've got this story, and it is an insane story about multiple kidnappings and getting through some of the worst parts of Mexico, crossing borders, all sorts of stuff like that. It's a wild story. And I'm not saying it's not true. I think it probably is true. Some of the stuff that he was talking about, that's stuff that I've even experienced in France. So the stuff when he's talking about they put the bags over your head and they take your camera and they start rifling through all your stuff and they're like deleting all your favorite photos because you took some photos of stuff that you're not supposed to, and you didn't really know you're not supposed to, but you kind of had an idea. So like in my specific situation, I was taking pictures of military patrols. I know, shouldn't have done it, but I was in France. I thought this is a first world country. I'm gonna be able to just come up in here. You know, I didn't even know there were gonna be soldiers present. But this was during the time when the yellow vests were rioting and trying to take back their country righteously. And so they sent in the military to basically put everybody down, and I just happened to be there. So I was also there when Notre Dame burned down, coincidentally, at the same time. And so I was taking pictures of them, and sure enough, they came over to me. They detained me, and they took my gear, and they told me to delete everything. I had to show them that I did, even though I didn't. I just have a couple tricks up my sleeve. And so that kind of stuff will actually happen 100% of the time. The hood obviously is going to happen 100% of the time. If you're being taken to an undisclosed location, they're not going to tell you or show you or allow you to look out the window so that you can relay that information later to somebody else. It seems like these people didn't really know what he was all about. And so because of that, there was some kind of interrogation going on. And he was inside of a cartel, if I'm not mistaken. So now we're going to take a look at some of the other things that you might see. I want to show you this footage of this is footage that was captured by people in Mexico, veterans in Mexico who were on patrol, and they came across a cartel drug mule, basically, drug and human trafficker, and took care of the situation and took his phone, and this is some of the footage that was on his phone, this drug trafficker's phone. This is the perspective of him watching the phone from his own cell phone. So it's a screen recording a screen. And we can see this kind of stuff. Look how heavily armed these people are. First of all, look at these guys. These guys are in full military kit, and they've also got obviously a heavy burden on. These guys are going to be walking for a long, long time. These are soldiers, these are fighters with stamina. These are men who are fully armed to the teeth because they're prepared for conflict. Not all of them are going to be. There's going to be some people here who are getting paid to carry stuff. There's going to be some people who have paid these people to get them across the border and stuff like that. In this particular situation, we see some very heavy packs and not that many people. So this looks like purely a drug trafficking. This looks like purely a drug trafficking endeavor right now. This doesn't look like much. I don't see a whole lot of other humans here who are, probably going to stay across the border. But this is how your fentanyl gets in. This is how your cocaine gets in. This is how your guns can get in here, your illegal firearms and stuff like that. This is how anything that can be smuggled gets in. Endless walking across this type of terrain only to get to the border and have to cross a river or a fence or part of an ocean or something like that. Sometimes nothing, depending on where you're at. And just looking at these videos, I don't know. I don't really want these types in my neighborhood, but maybe you're different than me, and that's okay. But these aren't your doctors, these aren't your lawyers, these are foreign fighters who are literally trafficking most likely fentanyl or cocaine into the US. And because of this, what you're gonna end up seeing is deaths in the United States. You're gonna end up seeing little kids overdosing. You're gonna see activity involving drugs because of this. Now, if you think that those types are only on the Mexican side, you would be sadly mistaken, and that's part of the problem, because we have those types on the US side as well. You just don't see them. But as somebody who has spent a lot of time on the border, I've seen firsthand how these units, these types of units are on both sides. And they're not ours, they're not American, they're not good, they're cartel, bro. And they will be that heavily armed on the American side. Not everywhere on the American side, right? Like, they're not going to be all the way up in Minnesota Minnesota maybe, actually. They might be that heavily armed there because pretty soon that's going to be a foreign nation. But, if you're down there on the border, you're more likely to see these types of heavily armed combatants and mules and traffickers coming through the area, coming through the borders, and just kind of walking around, forming groups, gangs, little cartel pockets within the United States, all sorts of stuff like that. And as they establish those footholds, they become more and more impossible to root out, which is why this is such a damn problem. Now, if you're saying, okay, so this is why President Trump wants to get rid of the Venezuelan president and establish a new regime and all of that kind of stuff. This is why he's posting destroyers off the coast of Venezuela and ordering the shoot down of any planes that buzz the ships and all that kind of stuff. Really cool, badass stuff that we're seeing. And if that is not good enough for you and you're kind of wondering, well, why don't they just go in there and get rid of the cartels? Listen, I live about 50% of my life in South America. I'm between there and the USA regularly, always fucking there. I will tell you this, it's just simply not that easy, because take a look at this video, you're gonna see how it's not just the cartel.
Se dice que ustedes son narcotraficantes. ¿Esto es verdad?
No, es totalmente falso. Lo que pasa es que nosotros nos financiamos de las economías ilícitas que hay en la región. Y la finanza más grande que nos resulta para el sostenimiento de nosotros es el impuesto a los narcos o traquetos que vienen a comprar la coca a los campesinos. De eso nos financiamos, pero hay gente de mala leche o que habla mucha carreta y ya nos tratan a nosotros de narcotraficantes. Pero no, los narcotraficantes están por allá en las ciudades, en los penthouse, en el Congreso, bueno, etcétera, etcétera. Pero nosotros no somos narcotraficantes, nosotros somos una organización insurgente con proyectos políticos, militares y organizativos.
It's not just the cartel. You have the cartel, and then you have militant groups that essentially police the cartel, and you could compare them to like militia groups. These organized groups of fighters who control an area, and even the cartel isn't necessarily able to root them out. And so what you have are these militia groups that tax the cartel. But the cartel can still plant their cocaine fields, their coca fields, and all that kind of stuff, and run their operations. It's just not their land. They have to pay a landlord, and it's these militant groups. So if you take away the cartels, the militant groups also lose their ability to feed their families because they are also illegal. And so what you end up illegally operating militarily is what I mean by that. So what you end up happening is you have two groups now, illegal groups. You have the cartel, you have the militant groups, right? And they kind of butt heads. They'll go into wars with each other. They'll have territory disputes. They will recruit each other if they can, and they will kill each other every chance they get. They'll abduct each other's kids. They'll raid each other's villages. They'll burn down each other's homes. But if there is no possibility for one to defeat the other and there is benefit in the relationship, i.e. money, they're just gonna strike up an agreement so that they don't both lose resources, right? This makes sense. But now you have two layers to the onion of fuck as a whole, but especially Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, all places that, you know, I come to call home. Then on top of these groups, you have the government, of course, and the military, and same deal. They also get money from this. And because they get such a substantial amount of money, because their biggest export is drugs, even if they're not gonna say that on the fucking website or whatever, it is. And it's drugs. And so what you end up having is this problem where the government, the militia groups, the militant groups, and the cartels are all sort of fingering each other, and there's not really a way to stop the relationship, because if one stops, then the other attacks. and if the other attacks, then the one dies, and then all of this, or loses money, or doesn't make any more money, and then a lot of people die, and then a lot of people go hungry. And so it's basically an operation that can't stop. It's like when you become an alcoholic and you drink so much that it becomes dangerous for your health to stop drinking because your body is now acclimated to that, and not only acclimated to it, but kind of needs it. Because you also have to factor in the civilians who are victimized by this whole operation, who instead of coca would much rather farm corn or something else. They're not necessarily, because all of these, there's not really cartel farmers in that way. They're regular people who are enslaved, or this is their land that they've always lived on, and of course it trades hands every once in a while because these groups become more powerful than the other, and raids happen, and war happens, and then of course territories change, etc. But these people are just regular people. They're just citizens of whatever country they're in, civilians. They're farmers. They're regular people who, if they could farm a different crop, they totally would. And right now, that is what governments in Colombia and Ecuador are trying to do, where they're trying to say, look, you don't need to farm this stuff to make money. We will pay you, and you can sell your crops of other types if you just give up the coca. But all of these cartels and militant groups are kind of like, why would we sell corn? Or why would we sell plantains? Or whatever the hell they want to farm. Why would we sell that when we have a product that makes 20, 30, 40, a billion times? Why would we sell a product that makes way less than cocaine, or fentanyl, or weapons, or people even? Why would we do that? Not only why would we do that, but what could you even do if we said no? And so they just say no every time because there's absolutely nothing they can do. It was only like a couple years ago that this cartel went on Ecuadorian news and assassinated everybody. And it was on live air. It was televised.
Una vez más, Ecuador se estremeció con una sangrienta masacre carcelaria. Hoy, un violento choque entre las bandas rivales presuntamente vinculadas con narcotraficantes dejó al menos 43 muertos y 3 heridos graves. Esto en la prisión de la ciudad de Santo Domingo de los Achilas. Las autoridades informaron que decenas de los reos aprovecharon el caos para fugarse, lo que 108 lograron.
¡Aquí está! ¡Al piso! ¡Al piso! ¡Al piso! ¡Aquí!
Mientras que 112 fueron recapturados, esto en los alrededores de la penitenciaria, donde los enfrentamientos comenzaron alrededor de las 2 de la mañana. En declaraciones a la prensa, entre otras cosas, el ministro del Interior, Patricio Carrillo, habló sobre cómo fueron asesinados los presos.
It was diabolical. It was like some Call of Duty scene. It was like the scene in the airport, if you guys know what I'm talking about. It was crazy. So anyway, hopefully now you can kind of see, get a little bit more glimpse of what the cartel operation even looks like. Like, what is actually happening here is more than just once in a while some people who aren't from here show up on the border. Those militant groups are also, and those cartels are also trying to establish themselves in the United States at any given point. Because if they can stop themselves, or if they can get across the border, they're way, believe it or not, safer now. Because now they kind of just have to worry about whoever might be looking for them in the States. But the border is a really focused point. It's a contention point that they have to cross. And if they don't have to cross it, even better. They're already in. Yeah, they're infiltrated. Perfect. They're in. So don't think for a second that those heavily armed style groups are not also in the United States, because they are. They just understand the value of remaining hidden. And you can think about this for any other terrorist group too. It's not just the cartels. It's also the Taliban, ISIS. It's any, who knows what kind of stuff Mossad or Russia or whatever, what kind of cells they've got going on in the States. But I guarantee you that they do. Just look at Minnesota. It's practically Somalia. So if you don't think there's heavily armed people from other countries who are not citizens operating within your borders, you're sadly mistaken, my friend. And I hope that you see these people and realize that These are the people who facilitate border crossings. These are the people who enable people to get across the border. All that stuff you're seeing on the news with people flooding through the fences and across the rivers and all that kind of stuff, that also happens, but that's like the gentlest form of border crossing. Like, because usually in those situations, it's heavily monitored. They've got drones in the sky, they've got guns on the ground, they've got stuff going on, and even if they have to let them in because, you know, there's 1,000 of them, at least we got them on the other side. We're still handling them. And this is where all the cages that people get all up in arms about come into play and all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to flip you or make a political statement or anything like that. I'm just trying to show you some real shit and just be like, think about this when you're getting ready to drop an angry comment because, you know, we put another destroyer off the coast of Venezuela. Think about that. Like, think about what's at stake. Think about what happens when all of a sudden these groups start, God forbid, shooting at the police, or God forbid, shooting at anybody who tries to take any of their control. And now they start treating our citizens in remote regions of Montana, maybe Native American reservations, stuff like that, where they can enslave a small group of people without anybody really knowing. And now they're setting up farms, they're setting up human trafficking rings, they're setting up drug rings and cartel stations in the USA. And that's exactly how it happens, and it's not just cartels, like I said before, it's any of these terrorist groups. Terrorist groups that we both know about and terror groups that we don't know about. Because for every one that we do know about, I'm sure there's another that is just raring to get going that we don't know about. There you go, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Life is in the blood. Talk to you next time.